welcome back to the EXP Podcast. I'm joined by my co-host Luan.
Hello.
And this week we have Michel and Miro with us, and we're going to be talking about being a lead artist. So can we get you guys to introduce yourselves? Michel, do you want to start us off?
Sure. My name is Michel Kooper. I'm currently the lead artist at PLAYERUNKNOWN Productions in Amsterdam, which is a fairly new studio. Before that, I was a lead environment artist at Cloud Imperium Games. And I've been making games as a 3D environment artist going back to 2008. So yeah, that's where we are now.
Old school boy.
Mm-hmm. Nintendo DS stuff.
Oh, that's cool. And Miro.
Hey everyone, I'm Miro Vesterinen. I'm a senior environment artist at Remedy, and I'm also a project lead and one of the environment art team supervisors here. And I'm still relatively new to being a lead, so I've been in the role for roughly a year and a half now. So starting around the shipping phases of Control, and then I continued from that to the Control DLCs as well.
All which look excellent, by the way, might I add.
So good.
Thank you.
I could spend the rest of the podcast talking about how much I love Control, but we have other things. Right, so being a lead is something that is quite varied and across different studios means a lot of different things. So I want to kind of start off by just kind of getting your guys' experience about what the kind of role has meant to you, and what have you had to do, and what kind of skills have you had to use in the role. So should we start off with Michel again?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that quickly became apparent to me when I stepped into the position is it's management of people and expectations and what people want to do on the team, what's important to them, and how they are the happiest. I think out of all the things, that's been the most important thing that I've noticed. There are elements in planning, time management, and those kind of things that you already have quite a few responsibilities in when you're like in a senior level. Often you're also taking care of a few juniors or mids. But yeah, when you step up to that one level above, being that in-between person between upper management or higher levels of production, I think that's where the big difference is.
And Miro, how'd say kind of different or similar to your experience?
Yeah, I would say it is like very, very similar. Like in the end, it's all about communication. So you're kind of responsible of making sure that all the members of your team are on the same page of what they're supposed to be doing, and that they are doing the correct thing at the correct time. So a lot of like production and management tasks involved. So staffing plans, recruitment plans, scheduling, and of course working with budgets as well, as time and people cost money. So
some leads are obviously a lot more on the production side, whereas some a little bit more on the art side. Either way, they're responsible for their team and taking care of their team and making sure they're enabled to do everything that they can. Have you guys found in any particular role that you guys are at that it's more production heavy or more art heavy?
Well, I would say that at least for me it's been pretty much 50-50. So I of course need to take care of the production side, but I still do like overpaints or feedback tasks for the artists making levels or environments overall. So I mean, I do less of actual like production levels anymore myself, but I'm still kind of involved also on the art side. So
I think it's similar for me as well. The current position that I'm in is more helping the team along, and now the team consists of multiple disciplines. So we have, for example, tech artists, animation modelers, all in one group, and it's just the production side. Obviously, make sure that everybody's going in the same direction and that tasks are aligned so that nothing gets stuck in a pipeline. even managing to do some work every once in a while, like actual production work, little additional assets here and there. But there's also a lot of tech work that we're doing alongside it. So working directly with graphics programmers or engine engineers that are working on big features.
So you mentioned a bunch of different kind of things that you kind of do in your day-to-day there, but what kind of are the key skills you think that you guys use that kind of define that separation from being a kind of 100% hands-on production artist, say, in kind of a senior role, to stepping up to that kind of lead role? What are those kind of either like the soft skills or some of the more technical skills, or something that you really need to kind of excel at the role of being a lead, rather than just someone who's kind of hands-on 100% of the time in the game?
I mean, it's probably like one of the biggest skills, I'd say, since making games is teamwork. So just kind of understanding that not everyone works like you might work, or they might not even think like you think of how to approach a specific problem or a scene or a level or whatever we are making. So I think that is kind of, you need kind of a more broad view of how to talk to people, since it's very easy when you're in production work, you're just making assets, you're making levels, that you're gonna get into that pipe and you expect everyone to be or know where the skills that you know, which might not be the case when you're trying to lead new people or people joining the project and so on. So I think that is like one of the biggest ones, just kind of understanding how different people work.
Yeah, I think communication and making sure that you're able to communicate with all the different disciplines and departments, and you're able to sort of analyze or break into smaller steps certain problems or questions that people have, just to make sure that you figure out, okay, well, this is an issue, this is a problem that we need to solve. I'm going to step back and keep an overview of like the bigger picture, and make sure that everybody is moving forwards towards the same goal.
Yeah, I think like the fact that you work as a lead, you're usually the person that communicates with other departments as well. So that usually comes into play quite quickly as well. So you kind of need to know a lot about, or not a lot necessarily, but something about level design or lighting and so on, so you can actually keep the communication going.
Are there any specific, I guess, not tricks, but I guess ways that you can deal with, let's say if your team has to do a task and other departments aren't quite ready to jump onto the task, or maybe they're just not communicating well together? Obviously, a lot of this would be helped by a producer, but what are some of the things that you can do to kind of help that along? Michel, what do you think?
Well, having a good producer on your side is absolutely important. And I think in a lot of cases, whenever there's a difference between having a producer and not having a producer, it's day and night. But I think within the circle of leadership, whether it's a design lead or more senior staff on the other departments that need to pick up on the task or continue it through the pipeline, or implement something. I think it's also important to have regular communication between those people, and even if it's not officially aligned yet, that people are aware in other departments, at least the people on like leadership, of what's coming and what to expect. It's not always tricky, and some companies are better aligned than others. But I think if you have good team leads for the different departments, a lot of those situations can be avoided.
So when you work with a producer, you were saying about how they kind of make life easier. How do you find that relationship kind of changes between when you go from being, say, a senior artist working in production to a lead artist? How does your relationship with production kind of change?
I I think back when I was in a senior position, it's like, oh my god, this producer again. Yes, I'm almost done, right? And you don't really, you don't always feel comfortable pointing out that you need more time on a task, or even though on a senior position, you should feel like you're able to speak up or mention something because you have experience enough. So, but when you shift to a lead position, he's more in assistance to you, trying to help manage the team and organize everything. At least that's how it's been from my experience, where you in the end make the shots, you make the calls, you decide how to move forward. But the producer is there to help you organize it and take some of the tedious like things out of your hand, like setting up Jiras, and in that case, you can actually talk on behalf of your team when you feel like there's you need additional time or things are going to go long, and they might not necessarily see why it should take longer, but you can actually have a chat with them and explain why something takes longer and sort of take the blame. But I mean, it's often there's like 10,000 valid reasons for why something is taking longer than expected. So
yeah, absolutely. How about you, Miro?
Yeah, I agree with everything said before. So, like usually, once you become lead, you are much closer to the producers than you were being like in a senior or in a production role. So you're kind of on that side of the table then, and you need to. I mean, it's also true that I think as well that like once you like the further you go, like the more value you see in producers. I think like it is very easily goes to that you don't want to discuss with them, and they're always pushing you to do work. But once you work with them much more closely, you appreciate them more and more. So I think that's at least the lesson I've learned, that their producers are very useful and very capable of making changes.
I promise you I'll log my time more on my Jiras.
Yeah.
So say you need to negotiate more time for your team. Obviously, I think one of the best ways to do that is to have all the evidence as to why you need more time. But is there anything additional that you can do to sort of help ask for an extra week or an extra month or on a task on behalf of your team?
Well, I think at the start, it's definitely important to when you start laying out a plan is to build in enough buffer time, and ideally you actually don't need it and you can go faster than you initially planned for. If that doesn't happen, I think there's a way of presenting a few options, and I think that's where a bit of the puzzling comes in. Presenting a few options and saying, okay, well, we will not spend as much time to this, or we can cut a corner here. In the end, nobody really wants to do that because everybody's super excited about the work that they're doing, and I mean, you want to present it as in a complete form. But yeah, that's having a few options, like either taking more time and do it completely, or if time is the highest priority and you really have to get something out, where can you like cut a corner or like leave a room out or whatever it needs to be to make it fit within that time frame. But yeah, the puzzle of building a few options and presenting them and talking to them, and whoever needs to make that call in the end, the more data you can provide them, the easier it will be to come to a solution that's maybe not ideal for everybody, but it's not going to be become an argument or a blame game, because in that case everybody sees the data in front of them and can make an educated choice on how to proceed forward.
Yeah, like I think like in some cases you also need to be the person that just says no. Like I think as a lead you need to be able to also make your stand when you need to do it. Okay, we just can't do this with the time or the resources we have. So I guess that is also like one kind of goes back to the skills and qualities you need. So I think you need to also be firm in when it's required. And of course, if you can find more or better ways to make the best product, then that is of course what we always aim for. But now and then you just need to say no sadly for a lot of things, but that's just reality.
And obviously, I guess your team has to be fairly decent at estimating times. But how would you deal with a team that isn't so good at estimating times? And do you just allocate them, look, this is how much I can give you. Can you get it done in this time? Or is it more a question of just trying to get them to get better at estimating?
Yeah, this I personally usually do it so that I first make like my own estimate. So I have like a rough week or a day plan of how long this should take, and then I just go to the artists or a team of artists if it's like a level or something, and ask them directly how long they think that will take, and then just kind of compare and see. Usually that gives quite a good insight, like how capable they are of reviewing how long their own tasks take. And then you just kind of start figuring it out, like if they are very far apart, like you think it's a couple days, they think it's a couple weeks, then you start kind of getting into that communication. Okay, are we on the same page? Why do you think it takes this long when I think it's this short?
Yeah, I usually take a similar approach. One thing that I've done in the past that I felt was very useful is to, after setting up an initial estimates for certain things, either based on previous tasks that are similar or comparable things, or just looking at the situation, looking at what needs to be done, is taking it to the team and as a team have them talk about the estimates, because they also might be able to help each other make better estimates, and as a team carry that responsibility. So when you're planning out a sprint, you have your list of tasks, and you can like realistically figure out, okay, how much can we fit in. If the team agrees, they also feel more responsible for making it work. And if somebody says, well, I think if I can help you out on those last 2 days to get that last thing done, then I might be a bit faster in my task, but I'm gonna commit to helping you get yours done as well. I think that's something that for a team achieving those goals is something that's been working really well in the past.
Right. Can you speak to sort of how to distribute tasks to your team? Obviously, you'll distribute to whoever is strong at certain things, of course, but how much more goes into it than that? Like, do you talk to them like, hey, here's a list of things, what do you want to work on? And do you just get like people's preferences, or do you just maybe just go, this person's going to be good at this, so we're just going to give them that?
In my situation, a lot of almost all of the examples that you've mentioned have happened, right? And I think it really depends on time that you have available to achieve a certain thing. In the long term, I think it's important to take the wishes of the team into account. And if there's people who feel like they've been sculpting rocks for the last 7 months and they're really just tired of doing rocks and they really want to do something else, it's up to you to try and find a way to get some different tasks, or vary it up, because I think in the long term it's healthier and it's better for the artist on the team. But if you do run into a situation where you need something done fast and you just have somebody who's kick-ass at hard surface and specific details, and you just really need to get it done, I mean, if you want to go full efficiency, then that person will probably get the task. I do think that regularly checking in with the people on the team and also sometimes explaining, like, hey, I know you wanted to dig more into substance texturing. we do have like a bunch of new texturing tasks coming up, but for this sprint, we really need this thing done, and by far you're the best person for this specific job.
Yeah.
And I think if you're just open about it, and regularly check in with the people about how they feel about their current tasks, and if there's anything that they want to move on to in the future, it will make it easier to find those opportunities. It kind of depends on the projects as well. Some projects they just have a very limited time set, and it just needs to be like fully efficiently, like down to the days or hours sometimes. And in that case, there is not a lot of wiggle room. But you'll see that in the postmortem, and then people maybe in the next project will say, well, now I really want to focus on vegetation or something, and then make the shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could add here that since I'm also a environment art team supervisor, so I work on like salaries and promotions and these type of things. So usually we, at least what we usually try to do is to consider those as part of the tasking as well. So we might have an artist that we might consider for a promotion, and so we then try to figure out a task that he or she could do that kind of could showcase that, okay, are they actually ready, and can they manage this extra responsibility that comes with the promotion. So that also kind of comes into play kind of outside of the actual just the project itself, so more like a company level tasking that gets kind of tangled in there somewhere that we need to figure out. So
that's actually quite interesting, because how would you deal with a situation where you, as you described, you set someone up to do this task, see if they can deal with the responsibility? Obviously it's a risk, so what if they can't deal with the responsibility? Do you shift the task over to someone else? Do you talk to them, see what the problems are, or do you just try to get them to do the task as best they can?
Well, usually it's kind of all of those options, so kind of depending how wrong is it going. Like usually you can kind of correct it if you notice early on that, okay, it's not going quite there what we were expecting, so you can start fixing that, okay, just do it more like this. But I mean, in some cases, of course, you just need to be ready to have like a plan B. Okay, if it fails, then we have this other person ready that they're going to just jump in and gonna fix it, or work together with the other artists to make sure that they can reach the quality. So it's kind of case by case situation, so it's hard to give like a magic bullet answer here, because otherwise I think our work would be much easier.
It sounds like quite a lot of your role comes down to kind of it depends, and being able to make those decisions as you go and on the fly, kind of being adaptable to those different situations. Are those kind of skills that you were able to pick up before or kind of during your career, or is it very much sort of like when you hit the lead role, it was more of like a trial by fire, and you kind of just, you got to get past each bridge as you kind of get to it?
Well, I think at least for me, we have been in the industry for a while, so you kind of already know how game development works and what are the stuff that we need to do. So you kind of already have the base there set up, and then it kind of comes down to your personality as well. So like how good you are at communicating with other people, and just how good you are at decision making is like a skill of itself. So those just kind of come into play there. But of course you can practice these skills. They're not something that you need to be like natural talent for those. But yeah, usually you need the moments to actually flex those muscles. So it's hard to do if you never get to do those decisions.
Yeah, I think I would completely agree there. Obviously, when you're starting out and you're working toward through your career and like leveling up along the way, you kind of get a pretty good idea of everything that's involved. And when you're at a more senior level, you'll often have more direct communication with your leads, just to help them break down specific scenes, or doing estimates for a larger area. So you kind of roll into it. And along your career, you often have like a few leads that you work with, and you can either feel like, okay, well, this person, I really enjoyed having him as a lead, and I kind of, if I ever get into that position, I want to make sure that I treat my people in the same way, or vice versa. You can also have bad examples. But I don't think it isn't until you get into that position and you're confronted with some of the situations that occur that then suddenly are your responsibility, that you start to have a completely new level of respect for all the leads that you've had in the past. I think I would agree. It's also part of your personality. And I think some people are more suited to it than others, just in how they can react or remain calm or look at a situation. But there's definitely resources that you can read or dig into that will help you become better at those soft skills as well.
Out of curiosity, how do you feel being a lead is particularly different in very small teams or even very small companies, indie, AAA versus AAA? Like, do you feel like maybe it's a position that's less needed in indie, and maybe that can be more of a producer kind of thing? Or do you feel like it's, how do you feel about it actually?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like smaller indie studios, usually it's just few artists, let's say, like those can pretty easily kind of manage themselves. Of course, there can be then problems like if there's no hierarchy at all. So like who makes the final call, and so I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I mean, if usually you need some sort of structure, or some sort of structure just makes it easier to work. Okay, you can rely that this guy handles that part and this guy handles this other job, and so I don't necessarily see that big difference between indies and AAA, but again, I guess it's more case by case. And
yeah, that's fair enough.
So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about time management. So we did mention a little bit before, but I think one thing that a lot of artists have is a sense of kind of wanting to get something perfect. That kind of idea about perfectionism and nothing is ever truly done. It kind of just is good enough, and I think especially on the kind of more junior end, that can be more difficult to really understand where that point is. So how have you kind of had to deal with helping manage the time of different members of your team, or how have you seen that kind of notion evolve in members of your team as they've kind of progressed up a little bit, or even, perhaps over the course of their kind of first year of joining? Have you seen, like, is it common to see kind of views change of jumping from someone saying, "Oh, I've got to get this thing absolutely spot on. It's got to be the most detailed fire extinguisher," and you're saying, "No, look, that's a prop you passed by in a corridor for 2 seconds. We just got to get it in." What's kind of your guys' experience been with that?
I think from the start, even on a junior level, I think it's good to try and involve like the person with doing the time estimates, and probably have them do their estimates a few times in a row and see how they compare. See if they constantly overestimate, or if they get stuck in this has to be perfect. It's tricky. I don't know if I have a perfect solution for it. Usually, it takes a few times. Like, oh, you can leave this detail out, or I think the fire extinguisher that you pass in the hallway is a perfect example. When you're focused on building up your portfolio, I mean, especially with being able to plug in like the 3D viewer in your art stations, like, you can, somebody's going to look at it and turn it around. It's like there's no fixed render, so you don't want to put anything on there that could potentially be considered lazy work or bad work. And I think it's a matter of having good buddies or mentors in the teams that sort of help in that regard.
Yeah, I think like also like pretty like good guidelines, of course, make things much easier. For example, for the props, like the fire extinguisher, maybe you have like a few quality levels, like a hero asset, standard asset, backdrop asset, or like some sort of low quality asset. So then you just throw those around, and once everyone knows what the quality level represents, then they can kind of visualize, okay, I don't need to do these very intricate small details to these assets because it's not important, and it might even get lost in like lower quality textures or something like this, so that they don't spend time doing something that is never seen by the player. So I think like that is overall pretty good, like mentality for more junior artists to, like, if they want to get into game development, that like the end product is the game. It's not like art assets that you do, it's the game. So that should be the thing that you actually care about.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think the one thing that I usually point out is like in the time that you would want to spend polishing like one single asset that sits in the corner, you could actually make a little set of three things that put together you can put into like a little scene, and it suddenly becomes way more than that single asset could ever be. And once they kind of get in that mindset and have maybe done that a few times, like, oh, actually, instead of making one perfect rock, I made this little set, and I can compose them in different ways, and now I can block these areas in my level with these cool rock assets. And when you walk through them or past them, I mean, they hold up fine. But you fill in more space, and the level and the game is in the end what you're working on. So
something quite interesting that you mentioned, Miro, was the fact that for a lot of juniors, they think they really want to get this asset perfect, and it's not really about the overall game. Do you guys have any experience or tips, any advice really about sort of helping those people realize sort of the bigger picture kind of thing, the game, the everything? Like, you don't need as many details because the game is what's important. Like, I think that some people can be quite slow to get to that realization. So I think any advice here would be really cool.
If you have a running build, sorry to jump in, but if you have a running build, play the build and see how things are coming along and progressing in the levels themselves.
Yeah, not enough people jump in game, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if there's again any specific training that you could do to improve those skills. I guess it's just trying to look at the bigger picture. That's just, I guess it's more about the mentality than the actual like skills of doing it. You just need to, I mean, of course, if you just keep making games, you're gonna, at some point, you most likely figure it out. Okay, it's the big picture that people actually care about, and that is what matters to the end user. So I mean, just keep making games, and
yeah, it's the game development experience in the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
so yeah, for sure.
I think that point about getting in and actually playing the game is so important. It can be so easy to get caught up, not even just for artists, but all kind of across aspects of game development, of not playing the game and coming in. I mean, it can be, it's why you kind of have a whole QA department, obviously, but it can matter so much just going in and realizing, oh, actually, this just doesn't work. I made this beautiful, we put together these rocks in this beautiful composition or something, but it just completely doesn't work because it just lets the player just jump up these and get out the world, or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, in game development, you're making a game and not something static like a film. That's the kind of big difference there. And yes, I think getting in and playing the game really, really does make a difference. So on a bit more of the kind of production organizational side, I think that there sometimes can be a notion that lead artists spend all their time kind of stuck in spreadsheets. How true or untrue in your experiences is that you end up spending more time kind of working on spreadsheets than you do anything else?
Partially.
Yeah.
I think in some cases I'm spending more, especially now with everything being remote, spending more time in calls with different people. But yeah, the spreadsheets, it depends on the project a little bit. And whether you're using something like Jira or doing a lot of manual labor in Excel, I wouldn't really recommend it, but you need to start somewhere, and sometimes you just need to like organize some stuff in your mind, even if you want to keep track of some numbers that you're putting down and try to make that puzzle for the first time. What does happen a lot of times is that if there's time, people are taking a bit longer on something, or actually there's a request to prioritize something else, then suddenly that entire puzzle doesn't work anymore. And there have been situations where it's where you're forced to make that puzzle again and again, just constantly reacting to changes. So yeah, it can sneak in there, and but yeah, sometimes it's not even that bad. If you have a good producer on your side, he can help you with a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. Like, especially now with everything being remote, like meetings are pretty crazy, like constant, endless loop of meetings. But I think it also kind of depends on the state of the project. Like usually, like in the early stages in pre-production, you have quite a lot of these meetings, and Excel sheets keep changing because the concept or the expectations for the product is changing. But I think like once it starts kind of rolling forward, you're in production, things are moving forward, it's usually a bit less Excel sheets and management, and you can actually do some asset work there as well usually. But so it depends on the stage and the project.
Yeah, I would agree that it really depends on the project. Projects that have a longer term fixed plan are probably it's more at the front. If you're in a project that has quarterly releases, or is part of a live game, obviously you'll be doing that dance fairly regularly.
So you mentioned live games there. Has that, in your experience with, you talked about a bit earlier, kind of trying to factor in buffer time and stuff, if you're on kind of a live service model with more regular updates, does that make it easier or harder to kind of manage the time? Because I guess you have more, as you go, you've got more experience in getting those releases out quicker, but at the same time, you've got much kind of tighter deadlines, and you haven't got so much room, presumably so much room to push things back if you run into complications.
I think with those shorter turnarounds, it's actually, I'd say it's the discussions that happen at the start and along the way in those first couple of weeks. Those are usually very intense, because that's, I think, where you really need to nail down what you are and are not able to do. And it's always less than you think, because there's always more situations that pop up and more bugs that need to be fixed, because if there's too much of it, it actually cannot go out at all. So you need to be super, super careful with how much you commit to. And it's a bit of a trap that you can fall into, thinking like, oh yeah, realistically we can build this and this and this, but the fact that you've built it doesn't mean that other departments have had their time with it, that design has been able to do their pass, and that it's tested, and all those things. So you need to take the entire pipeline into account, and depending on how long between releases, that means that either you have to stagger certain things if you feel like they're going over, but you cannot ship anything's partial. Then you probably want to see if you can split it into two teams working in a staggered, so you always have something going out. but those discussions and trying, like, being also pushing back if you need to, those are important, and it's tricky to do.
So another thing I wanted to kind of talk about a bit was the as a lead artist, you are more involved in kind of the hiring process of bringing new members into your team. So there's kind of different roles and different kind of hierarchy of things that most people, I'd say, know about. You've got kind of, junior, mid, senior. But when you're kind of hiring for these different roles, what are the kind of things you look for, and what actually differentiates someone between, say, a junior and a mid or a senior beyond like an arbitrary number of years experience?
Well, I think like for juniors, you usually hire or look for people with like the most potential. Since like none of us at some point of our careers, we weren't the best at anything, but people grow and get better, so you try to find those rough diamonds, so to say. So, but yeah, I think for juniors, like you don't need to be best at things. You just need to have a very good base, and then have the potential that you're actually interested in learning, and you want to become the best you can be. And of course, you need to also be a team player, so you actually fit the team culture or the company culture that we can kind of shape you into or shape you forward with your career.
How do you pick that stuff out in an interview? Like, what kind of questions do you ask that to sort of help you find out, oh yeah, this person would be like more willing to, make those changes, etc.?
I think, well, usually it's just seeing how much they follow latest trends, and like what have they done any how should I say it, like extra work or extra effort into kind of spreading their kind of see how they find knowledge about certain things. And it's just kind of it's hard to kind of put it into words, but usually you just kind of get that feeling out of a person that, okay, this seems like a person that wants to move forward and puts the effort to move forward. So that usually just it's hard to define what that exactly is, but it's just a feeling.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's usually you get that feeling from the portfolio already.
Yeah.
You can tell that if somebody's keeping up with the latest techniques or specific tools that are that are currently very popular. It's not always something that is very obvious in a conversation. I've met people in the past for which I honestly felt like, oh wow, is this person really motivated? But they're maybe they are very introverted, for example, and they don't really feel they're super nervous in the conversation, and but their work, I mean, it's nicely polished. There's a few pieces that are showing a lot of promise, and it's about finding those diamonds in the rough. It's sometimes a feeling. It's a feeling, definitely a feeling thing when you're talking to somebody, even though the conversation might not feel like it's going super smooth or the person is super excited to do the interview. They might just turn out to surprise you once they find their footing and feel a bit more comfortable.
On your guys' opinion, how do you feel that introvertedness plays into, I guess, promotions and climbing up the rank? Do you think someone that is really, really quiet and doesn't really engage too much in communicating with the departments, but they're really, really good, like their skill is really good, do you feel like you need to get them out of their shell a little bit more? Like what are some things you can do there?
I've definitely seen it happen in the past where people who are really, really, really skilled, but they're just sort of doing their own thing, and they just focus on the work. They are not very loud or very noticeable in the studio because they're the people doing the work in the corner and like creating awesome stuff. I think it's the responsibility of the lead to sort of check in with those people and make sure that you notice them. Because I don't necessarily feel if that happens and it's going well and you have a good overview of your team, then it shouldn't be an issue. But it's not always the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would say that at least, or especially for more senior and lead roles, that kind of like your influence in the company or in the team is also like a quality. So, of course, it's very hard for me to say because I feel that I'm more extrovert, outward type of person. So, but yeah, you just like if you don't really communicate with people, you just keep doing your thing. It's kind of hard to build that influence that people actually rely on you or come to you when they have problems. So it is kind of problematic. Like, how do these people move forward in their careers? Usually, we have or try to build a path for them that they can focus on, for example, like content creation or something like this, that they can do more individual work. So they don't really need to, they just only need to do the best quality work they can on the specific field that they are focusing on. And then have separate, more leadership oriented paths for the people who are more natural in those roles.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one thing that is also useful is buddying up those people with more junior people, because what often happens is in a one-on-one situation or them sort of helping maybe like two juniors that are working with them and kind of mentoring them, they don't feel like they have to be very open in like the entire team or speak up a lot during meetings and carry a lot of weight there. But they can sort of use that mentoring and coaching opportunity to transfer knowledge and pass on some of the skills that they've learned there. And I think that's another way of becoming like a strong, dependable, like more senior member in the team.
With kind of that mentoring, is that something you look for when you're looking to hire someone into like a senior role rather than a mid role? That someone who is able to have kind of show or explain, I guess in an interview it's probably easier to pick on that. But is that kind of mentoring someone taking on that role and helping kind of shape and work alongside others? Is that something you find helps separate those a bit, or what do you kind of look for in that senior role to kind of move someone to say, yeah, this guy's a senior rather than a mid?
I think that's for me always something that's a big plus. If I get the vibe that, okay, this person is able to transfer knowledge, is able to break down complex problems or explain things very well, that's definitely a big plus. I mean, seniority, usually there's if like a few ship titles or a certain amount of years that people count, and I think that's valid, but it's only telling half the story. But I think how people handle themselves in the team, I think that's and that being the team player, I think it was mentioned at the start of the podcast. I think that's absolutely an important thing. I personally, somebody can have 20 years of experience and be absolutely kick-ass, but if they're really hard to work with and they're just causing toxicity in a team or being really disruptive and everybody is they don't really enjoy working with that person, those people are doing more damage than they're doing good.
Yeah, I think like for mid levels, you just want that kind of consistent quality and output. You know, it's not their first rodeo anymore, so they just know what to do, how things are done. but they don't necessarily need to lead or guide other people except themselves. But once you get to the senior ranks, you kind of need that experience and reliability that you can guide a small team or train those junior and mid-level artists to get even better at what they do.
Yeah, the team player stuff is super important, right? But I guess a lot of companies just specifically put out senior job adverts, right? So it's not often that I'm assuming that you get senior people applying for mid positions. Yeah,
I think the part of the always having a senior position open is that it's a bit of a catch-all opportunity.
Yeah.
You never know who might be really talented and just happens to be looking for an opportunity. So oftentimes you'll see studios always have like a senior environment position open. It's like, you think like, oh man, this has been open for months. Well, how is this not filled? But it's just, they're keeping it there just as an entry for anybody who might be going by the website and feeling, oh, actually, this is interesting. Maybe it is a really talented person. Yeah,
for sure. Do a little fishing.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, because it can often seem, I think, something that I've seen come up on Discord quite a lot, where it seems like a lot of there aren't many junior jobs that pop up, but it seems like there's always senior jobs. But like you're saying, there's kind of keeping those senior roles always open. It's always going to tilt in the favor of the more senior, to make it seem like there's more senior roles than junior roles, when in reality it's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I think the junior roles are also a lot of hidden hires, either coming directly from internships or connections with certain schools,
referrals and stuff, right?
Yeah,
I guess it's quite tricky, because by nature of being a junior, they're kind of unproven. So any additional information you can have, or any like a referral of someone vouching, or a connection with a school where you can kind of know that they've learnt the things that you need them to know, these kind of things can really tip the scales. So, have you got anything else you wanted to ask Luan before we move on to some Patreon questions?
Yes, let's do this. I will ask first Miro. I would like to know his favorite food.
Oh no.
Surprise.
Surprise question. Oh my god. What is my favorite food? I don't know. I had pizza today, so that is pretty good.
Pizza is pretty good, but I feel like you're just saying that because you had it today.
Yeah, it's the first thing that popped into my mind, so it's my favorite thing now.
That was my logic in a previous one, I think.
It was, yeah, pretty sure you said that. All right, fine. Michel, then.
My favorite food?
Yeah.
It's a really hard choice, but I think it's Indonesian.
Yeah, all right.
What is Indonesian food? I can't think. Have I ever had it? I wouldn't know to identify what Indonesian food was.
Well, this is somewhat something that's very more common in the Netherlands, actually, which is also why I've missed it a lot in the last 10 years. It's stuff like rice. It has some common things with, for example, Chinese food. But it's a stir-fried rice often, with a lot of use of peanuts and like sauce made of peanuts and chickens on a stick, like a satay. Yeah. And they have like a whole range of little chunks of meat that have been in the pan for a really long time. It's like super soft and in different flavors and different spiciness, and it's really nice.
Thank you. That is all. You may now do the Patreon questions, Tim.
It was a surprise early Luan bonus.
I know.
Yeah. Got to mix it up.
Got to catch him.
Okay, so I've grabbed two questions here. So we're going to start off got one from Francis. He's asked a few, but I picked this one. So he's asked, is it important for a lead to have the highest artistic skill in the team?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
it almost hurts to say it, but no.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's to be very honest, it would almost be a waste, because you'd likely want to have that person just full on production, either in a senior position or
Like
in
a
a more
principal.
like a principal role, because I think that person will be able to focus on what they do best.
Yeah, I mean the principal and the lead are essentially kind of on the same levels, right? But like the principal is really doing
Yep.
the artwork, so they would probably go towards that career path rather than a lead. But to extend that question a little bit, how about on a senior? Is it important for a senior to have the highest artistic skill, or is it just more of a, this guy's really good at getting stuff done, even if it doesn't look the absolute best?
Kind of depends. Again, kind of what the situation is and what the project is, and again, so many factors there makes it hard to say. Like, of course, usually you would want them to be, because then they could teach your mids and juniors very efficiently, because they already have the know-how. But yeah, it's not always the most important. I think that just having the ability to get things done is, and I think that just comes with experience as well. That you know that how things are done and where do you need to cut corners and all these things. So
Yeah, I think being able to close things, and sometimes a senior is not necessarily like artistically the strongest person in the team. Hell, if you have a group of seniors, they all have their own specific reasons for being in that position. But some might be very, very strong on technical elements, or being able to manage like the scenes very well and be able to close things down if necessary.
Yeah, I think like the fact that kind of every artist is different is like you can't really expect them to be the best or better at than everyone else in the team on like everything. Maybe they have the best ability to understand the big picture, but maybe you have like mid-levels who are much better at asset creation or texturing or something like this. So it kind of what is the most valuable skill kind of changes depending on what needs to be done.
Yeah, I guess it's quite multifaceted, so it's possible for even a junior to come in and be better at some really specific element. Like maybe they come in and they're just genius at sculpting wood and they sculpt the best wood you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But they're not on the same level at doing the hard surface or looking at the bigger picture. So I guess being the best artist is also incredibly subjective, and what does that even mean?
What does art mean? Tell me.
What are art?
What M?
42.
We'll answer it all.
But it's definitely true that even on a junior level, somebody can come in and have some crazy cool skills on a very specific area. I've seen that happen in the past as well. But what sets them apart from more experienced people is that once they get in a situation and don't know how to solve it, they kind of lack the experience, or like running into 1,000 different problems that you solved along the way. And you kind of show them an example of, oh, you could solve it like this. Like, whoa, wow, I really didn't know you could do that like that. So, well, there's more than the things that you've learned so far, right? And that's perfectly natural. I think that's what sets each level. I don't even like the word, but each junior, senior, mid kind of apart.
I guess the more you run into it, the kind of more tools or situations that you've had to encounter, you'll know how to handle them, and you've got more in your back pocket to get through next time.
Yeah, and I think it can be very Well, that's the thing with scans and all the amazing texturing tools that we have, for example, these days, where you have all these amazing smart filters, and you can create a lot of beautiful art really quickly, and get to a result that is would have blown portfolios out of the water just a couple of years back without even getting close to the amount of experience that those people have.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly cool. But what's important as well is that once something doesn't work, that you have the underlying understanding of, okay, why is this not working, or why is this broken, or what's going on here, and you're able to analyze or dig through your pipeline or your process and figure out where it's not working. And I think, yeah, that's basically where the experience comes in.
And I have one more question here from Nicholas. So he's asked, did you start your lead positions by applying to them, or were you promoted internally? And what are some advantages or disadvantages to kind of both of those things?
I could start here. So I actually started as a junior, so I've been kind of climbing the ranks. So I think like the benefit of doing that is that you get quite familiar with the company culture and how things are done, because you've basically seen all the steps that are there, and then you can also start thinking like, okay, how could they be better, or what are kind of the roles and responsibilities that I had back then, and what they should be in the future, and how to make it like better for everyone. So I think that that's like a good thing that you just kind of it, but I think that's also like a disadvantage, that since you might get stuck on the ways that things have been done for years. So like someone with fresh eyes, new lead to a new company or new project, they might have a very different idea how things should be done, and it could be much better that you just don't know or can't really figure out, because you've been doing the same thing this very specific way for years already.
For me, it was slightly different, but there are some things that are a bit similar, because I applied for the position when I moved to a different company, but I knew that a lot of the people moving to the company as well, it was going to be a new team that was going to be built up from the ground up, and a lot of people that were moving there as well. I've worked with previously, either by directly mentoring them, or they were in the same team. So when we started there, I could first of all start things fresh and do it as I thought would be the best way I could do it at that point in time. But I also had the confidence from the people that were in my team, and I think that's the biggest benefit of growing into that position in the same company. And I think actually it's having that confidence from the people is super important.
On that note, how would you approach, you apply for a lead position in another company with an existing team? How would you approach sort of easing your way there, like meeting everybody? How do you start to feel at home as a lead there?
Having a lot of conversations, and being prioritizing meeting the team, and seeing the studio and seeing what you're stepping into. Because if you're just having interviews with like upper management or people that you're reporting to, as you usually do, that's one thing. But I think it's important to make a point that if you interview, that you interview with the team as well, even if they don't have it as part of their process. I think a lot of studios do, but sometimes they don't. But I would definitely suggest that if it's not part of the process, see if you can actually have the opportunity to talk to the team, even if it's a group of seniors that would be reporting directly to you. and have a conversation with them. It's a bit weird in COVID times, but always have that studio visit and see if you can go to lunch with people just to get to know the people and see if you actually get along, because I don't believe in a lead stepping into a situation where people are not really waiting for a new a person to step into that position, maybe, or somebody in the team is eagerly like waiting to be promoted or has been working towards that. And I don't know, it's really important to get a good vibe from the team that you'll be leading.
Yeah.
I think we've covered everything on that subject. So do we have anything else we wanted to end off with, Luan, before I wrap us up?
No, because I threw in that early surprise question.
Curveball. Brilliant. All right. So on that note, thank you very much to our wonderful guests, Michel and Miro, for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to Luan for being here with us. Our emotional support, Luan.
Always. That is my reason in life.
Thanks, Luan.
And if you guys want to get more involved with the EXP community, you can head over to the website to come and read some of the articles we got up there, or you can come join us on Discord to join in some of the discussions that we have going on. We've been crazy lively lately, so you're missing out if you're not in there. And on that note, thank you everyone for being with us. Thank you guys for listening in. We'll catch you next time. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.